Today we're going to talk about the Enlightenment, the time when thinking for yourself became the most rebellious idea of all. So last time we talked about the scientific revolution, the era when people like Copernicus, Galileo, and Newton started figuring out how the universe actually works. Pretty big deal, right? But then some thinkers started wondering, what if those same laws that explain how planets move could also explain how people should live together? In other words, if reason can make sense of the stars, maybe it can make sense of society. That question kicked off a whole new movement. So let's find out what the Enlightened meant. These ideas were so bright, they could probably power your Chromebook even when you forgot your charger. The Enlightenment, also known as the Age of Reason, was when thinkers started using logic and science to study people, how we think, how we're governed, and what makes a fair society. They believed that just like nature has laws, there must be natural laws for human behavior and government too. Philosophers, or philosophes, as they were called in France, started questioning everything that had been accepted for centuries. Kings, the church, the class system, nothing was off limits. A lot of these debates happened in salons, which were fancy get-togethers in the homes of wealthy Parisians. Think of them as the 1700s version of a lively group chat, except instead of sharing memes, people were trading revolutionary ideas about freedom and equality. Let's start with Thomas Hobbes, an English thinker writing in the mid-1600s, right in the chaos of England's Civil War. Hobbes looked around at all the fighting and basically thought, wow, people are the worst. In his book called Leviathan, he argued that humans are naturally selfish and violent, and that without a strong government, life would be nasty, brutish, and short. To keep order, Hobbes said that people should make a social contract, meaning give up some freedom in exchange for protection and stability under a powerful ruler. Basically, he thought society works best when someone's in charge to keep everyone in line, preferably an absolute monarch. Then, along comes John Locke, another English philosopher writing a few decades later when things start to calm down in England. Locke had a way more positive view of people. He believed that everyone is born with natural rights, life, liberty, and property. You could say he wanted to lock in those freedoms. He argued that governments exist to protect those rights, not take them away, and if a ruler doesn't do that, the people have every right to rebel and set up a new government. Pretty bold idea for the 1600s. Locke's ideas would go on to inspire revolutions and the demand for rights all over the world, including France's Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen, which declared that all men are born free and equal in rights. Now let's talk about Voltaire, the French writer and master of sarcasm. He was active in the early to mid-1700s and loved using humor to expose the problems in society. Censorship, corruption, religious intolerance, you name it. Voltaire was basically history's original keyboard warrior, except he used quill pens instead of the caps lock key. He became famous for defending freedom of speech and religion, and he's often credited with saying, "I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it." He never actually said those exact words. They were written later to summarize his beliefs, but they do capture him perfectly. Voltaire believed that even unpopular opinions deserved to be heard, because without free speech, you don't really have freedom at all. Next up is Baron de Montesquieu, another French thinker writing in the mid-1700s. In his book, The Spirit of the Laws, Montesquieu had one simple but genius idea. If you give one person or group too much power, things are going to go downhill very fast. His solution? Divide it up. He came up with 3 branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial, each with the ability to check and balance the others. Sound familiar? His ideas basically became a blueprint for modern democracy, including the US Constitution. Finally, let's go over Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who was writing in the mid to late 18th century. Thomas Hobbes thought that people were naturally bad and needed control. Rousseau completely disagreed. He believed that people are naturally good. It's society that messes them up. Clearly, he'd seen what happens during group projects. Rousseau also talked about the social contract idea, but he thought people should form a social contract with each other instead of with a king. What's the goal? A community guided by the general will. What's best for everyone, not just the rich or powerful. That idea shows up later in the Declaration of the Rights of Man, which says, the law is the expression of the general will. He also pushed for popular sovereignty, meaning government only works if it's based on the consent of the governed. In plain English, the people are the boss. Other Enlightenment thinkers took these ideas even further. Mary Wollstonecraft, an English writer in the late 1700s, argued that women deserved the same education as men. Radical for her time, but she believed that women couldn't truly be equal without access to learning. Her book, called A Vindication of the Rights of Woman, laid that out loud and clear. And in Scotland, Adam Smith was busy rethinking economics. In 1776, the same year the American colonies declared independence, he published The Wealth of Nations. Smith argued that when people are free to compete and trade, the economy naturally regulates itself. He called this the invisible hand of the market, kind of like how Newton's laws guide motion, but for money. Together, these thinkers pushed people to question authority, use evidence, and imagine a better world. The Enlightenment didn't stay trapped in books or salons. It changed the world. In America, colonists used these ideas to justify independence from Britain. In France, Rousseau and Voltaire inspired calls for liberty and equality that led to revolution. Enlightenment ideas are still shaping the way we think about freedom, government, and human rights today. Stay tuned for the next video, where we'll take a look at what happens when kings and queens try to act reasonable. The age of enlightened despots. Spoiler alert, it doesn't always go as planned.